of it, which is also pressing. So our first speaker will be Kiran, who has been working on agriculture issues. Kiran is, joined AID when he became a graduate student at University of Maryland. He came from having done his electrical engineering at IIT Madras, and then he did his master's at University of Maryland. And while here, he started volunteering for AID and pretty much working full time for AID, while working also full time at Hughes Network, here. And he was literally having two jobs, one paid and one unpaid. And then about 12 years ago, Kiran decided to get back to India to work full time on farmers' issues and on the agriculture crisis. And I think many of you have heard and been inspired by Kiran's work in agriculture. Of course, farmers in India are, have been in the forefront news, and Kiran has also been speaking on their behalf about their demands on minimum support price and so on. Today, he will talk both about the work that he's doing with AID directly on the field as well as on the overall picture of agriculture. Hi, Kiran, over to you.
Thank you, Ravi. Very nice to be here. Hello, everybody. It's morning for us, and I guess it's evening for you there. So good evening to all. So it's always a pleasure to speak to the AID Seattle group and also the whole group of supporters and all of you who are not only financially supporting but also very involved in understanding our work and trying to see how to enhance it and so on. So that's a real pleasure. And like Ravi was referring, farmers have been at the forefront of news in India, and farmers' issues, I think, have become a discussion point, even in the drawing rooms of people across the country and abroad also. One of the things that I would like to say is that, of course, this particular movement, it's a very special situation where so many lakhs of farmers have come out onto the roads because they felt that certain laws were against the interests of the small farmers in the country. However, in general, this also has brought to the forefront the fact that the farmers' situation and what is happening in agriculture is very much tied to government policies and what the government should be doing and should not be doing. That plays a very big role. And not just in India, I mean, across the world, in any country. I think even in the US, the US Farm Bill, for example, is a major, topic of discussion whenever it comes up, I think every 5 years, because what kind of support systems the government puts in place for agriculture, like it does for any other enterprise and, many other fields, becomes very important, and particularly in the Indian context is even more important because majority of the farmers are small and marginal farmers. So therefore, you have all these, millions, like there are about 9 lakh farmer households who are directly owning land and doing agriculture, and there are another 6 lakh who are not owning land but still involved in agriculture. I meant 90 million households who own land and are doing agriculture, and another 60 million or so who don't own land but who are involved in agriculture. So therefore, being small players, it's very important for them, for the system to work for them, or at least be fair. It doesn't need to be loaded in the favor of farmers, but at least it should not be loaded in the opposite side, right? So that is something that when we started working on farmers' issues in India, basically motivated by two things. One is we were motivated by the fact that we need to move to a more sustainable model of agriculture where we don't use up all our soil fertility and water resources and deplete our natural resources in order to do agriculture, and also use a lot of chemicals and so on. So that was one angle in which we had got into this work with agriculture, because that was also making, this high input kind of agriculture was also making farmers impoverished. The other thing is, farmers being in distress, a lot of farmers committing suicide, and in general, the situation in the rural area in terms of economic situation being dismal, which once again has an effect on the entire country and entire economy, because there's a lot of distress migration from the rural to the urban. And that is one thing which has come to the fore also in this whole COVID crisis. People just could not imagine that there were so many, tens of millions of people from, Jharkhand and Bihar who are working in Hyderabad, and from, from interior Telangana who are working in Mumbai, and so on, right? This is also tied to the rural crisis. So just coming to our work, what we have been doing is, we have been working directly with farmers to support them, help them in various ways in certain pockets, where we are directly working in the ground. For example, organizing them as farmer producer organizations, so that they can actually have a better collective bargaining power. They can set up their own processing units, so that they can actually have a better control over the value chain, so that they are not only selling raw produce, but actually they can process and they can package, they can market, so that they can get a better share of the entire value chain, or to help people, to farmers, to move to more sustainable forms of agriculture, and organizing farmers on at different levels. That is one aspect of our work. The other aspect of our work is basically to make sure that the government support systems, which are required to make agriculture sustain like any other enterprise, they are actually working for the farmers. For example, right, in the last couple of years in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, where I directly work, there have been very heavy rains, unseasonal. The rains came in the rainy season, but towards the very end, in October and November, and that is the time when there is actually the crops are almost ready for harvest, or the grain formation is taking place. And very heavy rains at that time actually causes extensive damage, because already for 3-4 months farmers have been cultivating the crops. So last year in October 2020, there was a huge rains in Telangana. Just like Chennai is in the news because of all the heavy rains and water logging and so on. In 2020, Hyderabad was in the news. Exactly the similar situation. However, when Chennai or Hyderabad gets flooded so heavily, also there is impact on the rural areas where the crops get flooded, damaged, and so on. But that is not so much in the news. So that is where we had reached out to see what is happening to the farmers whose crops are getting damaged. So there's extensive damage. And according to the Disaster Management Act, the government is supposed to provide compensation for the crop damage to a certain extent. I mean, it's a limited support. Actually, farmers invest about 20 to 30,000 rupees per acre for cultivation. This compensation that comes is only about 5,000 rupees per acre. But even that can be a lifeline, because there is at least some recovery that the farmers can make. But even that was not being done. Actually, Telangana government did not give a single rupee, or even initiate the kind of enumeration of all the farmers whose crop got damaged. So we sent a lot of petitions to them and so on. Finally, we went to the High Court because the government was not acting, and the government also had stopped the entire crop insurance scheme in the state, which is which is once again a lifeline, because when there's extensive damage, then the farmers have to fall back on crop insurance to recover at least some of their costs. So we went to the High Court, and of course the case dragged on in the High Court because the government was stonewalling. Finally, this September on 29th, we got a verdict which basically was in our favor. So what we exposed in the court is that the government had already made a survey district-wise, identified how many acres of land had got damaged, and totally it comes to about 15 lakh acres. So that's what 1.5 million acres of crop had got severely damaged. That means it's more than 33% damage. So that means the yield will fall by more than 33%. And they had sent this report to the center, requested funds. The center had sanctioned only a fraction of the funds. They had requested couple of thousand crores, but the center sanctioned only about 200 crores for this. But even that 200 crores, the government did not reveal that they got the funds or made any effort to distribute them. So we got a High Court order which said within 4 months you need to identify the all the farmers whose crop was damaged and distribute to them. So with this kind of intervention, actually we are doing two things. One is, though we are a small team, see, we are about maybe 15 people working full time in various districts as well as at the state level, partly supported through the 8 projects. And we have a network of about, few hundred people working in various districts across the state. But the kind of impact that we've been able to achieve for the farmers would be of the order of, let's say, $25 million. I mean, if at least this 200 crores which came from the center reaches the farmers, it's about $25 million going to the farmers. So this is the kind of impact one can make if we are actually trying to make the government system work. The other thing is that now that they got a High Court order adverse against them, from the next year onwards, they will be more careful in terms of initiating the disaster compensation or the crop insurance scheme and so on from the beginning, rather than reacting after several months. This is one example of the kind of work that we are doing. Shripriya, can you start sharing the slides? I just put together to highlight 3 or 4 kinds of work that we are doing, which I'll go through quickly. I know the time is also short. So this is the Telangana High Court's landmark order, because it's the first time we got an order where the court said that this kind of a disaster compensation or running crop insurance scheme and so on, it is not just a discretionary thing. It's not optional. That the government implements it when when it is awake, and doesn't implement it in some years. It said it's the obligation of the state actually to implement disaster relief act and also the crop insurance scheme, and ordered that these 500,000 farmers, including tenant farmers who don't have land patta in their name, should all get compensation, and gave a 4-month time. Actually, now already about 2.5 months are over. We are continuing to campaign at the ground level to make sure that the farmers are identified, to make sure that district administration springs into action and so on. And if the government doesn't do it in 4 months, once again, we are going to go to court to file a contempt petition and force the government to do it. So this is one example of the kind of intervention that we are making on behalf of farmers. And there are many situations, I mean, there are many issues. There are many government support systems, from the land record system to disaster compensation to crop insurance to running fair market systems for the farmers, ensuring fairness in the market. So all these kind of things need to be in place for farmers to make at least a decent living. Next slide, please, Shripriya. So in this respect, one of the major initiatives that we have taken up is something called the Kisan Mitra Helpline, which is a helpline that we are running for farmers in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh in a few districts, where anybody can call, any farmer or agriculture worker can call with any problem, and we then either advise them on the phone on what they can do to address that problem, or also identify which department that problem has to do, because most of the problems that are reported has to do with some government department not doing its function properly. It could be about the land records not getting transferred into the children's name after their old parents pass away, so therefore they don't have access to any of the government schemes, or it could be the fact that there is a pest attack and the extension officials have not really reached out to the farmers to provide advice, which they are supposed to. That's part of their duty. So then they call the helpline. We alert the extension officials saying that there's a pest attack in this village, and then they go and fix the problem. So it is kind of acting as a both an interface with the government departments to alert them to their role, what they need to do and where the gaps are. Secondly, it also becomes an accountability mechanism, because we also work with the district administration with the district collector in these districts. So every couple of weeks, every week actually, we provide a report to them. What are the pending cases? What are the problems which have come to our notice, not yet got solved, and so on. So every month, the district collector does a review of all the pending cases of this, from the Kisan Mitra helpline, and that helps the district collector to keep a tab. It's an accountability mechanism. Otherwise, the reports that reach the district collector from the ground level officials is always that everything is going fine, everything is being implemented properly, but the gaps get highlighted because we have this other feedback mechanism through the Kisan Mitra helpline. So many issues have been solved. We have handled about 13,500 distinct cases until now, of which about 9,800 have been resolved. The others are still pending. Some of them have to do with long-term government policy, so it may not be fixed also, but whatever we can fix, whatever we can get resolved, we are doing that. So this year, Aid Seattle chapter has been supporting the Kisan Mitra helpline, and we have expanded that from the original 3 districts to 5 districts. And now every month we are actually adding some more districts. This month we have a meeting with the Warangal collector. We already had a preliminary meeting in November. December we are going to have a meeting to launch the helpline in Warangal. Let's move on. I wanted to share some of the individual cases which we have been able to handle, but I think we can do that if there is time later. So this is one major initiative that we are doing, the Kisan Mitra helpline. And now this helpline has also inspired the similar helplines in a couple of other states also. And we are looking at whether we can actually help support or provide even logistical or knowledge kind of support to make those things happen. Because in our team, basically, we've now brought together kind of multiple talents, because normally there are many helplines which run, but in our helpline, we also have developed a very good IT system to track each and every problem and then make sure that it gets resolved. And we've also have an interface where the government officials themselves can log in and check which are the pending problems against us, and then try to resolve, at least the ones who have the initiative. So just yesterday we had a hackathon in our office on Sunday, where some of the IT friends also came in. Even the additional collector of the Rangareddy district came to our office, spent several hours, because we are redesigning the interface which the public can have to the Kisan Mitra data. So that kind of work we've been doing. And one of the strengths of the Kisan Mitra helpline is also that at the district level we have field people. A couple of them supported, from the aid project, but because we also have a network of people working on farmers' issues across the state. We have also a lot of people who are voluntarily coming in. Once a problem is referred to them, they follow up with the farmers and try to get the problems resolved. The other initiative that we are very involved is in Anandapur District, which is the driest district in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. It's a very drought-prone area. So there we've been supporting work where this is the grassroots work that I was talking about. So one is trying to make the government system work. The other is working in different districts directly with the farmers. Here, one of the key thing which there are two key aspects actually. One is there is a major initiative on sustainable agriculture and growing millet crops, growing crops which are more suitable to the dry land area, do not require much water, and also setting up processing units for those millets and helping in the marketing of that. Here, women farmers have come together. There's a very, very heartening example of about 10 to 15 women farmers coming together, and they're all landless. 5 out of them are from farmer suicide families, like their husbands have committed suicide, and because we work on the farmer suicides issue, we have been in touch with them to provide different kinds of support. Now they've formed a collective, and they've taken about 10 acres of land on lease, and they're collectively farming it, and now they're actually making a decent amount of income, growing vegetables and marketing them on a weekly basis, and so on. That's a very inspiring place where I've gone and visited several times, and you can see the women farmers also doing the processing. In the other photograph. But not only this kind of so this collective farming now has inspired similar groups to be set up in a couple of other places. So there are three places where now this kind of a women farmers collective farming is going on. I mean, these are all small initiatives, but can provide us a roadmap for ahead. So at a larger level, at the district level, REDS has also established three farmer producer organizations which are completely consisting of women farmers. And normally all the cooperative societies or anything are completely dominated by men. So therefore we have formed only an all women farmer producer organizations, and there are three of them, and they are functioning very well. Each of them has about between 500 and 1,000 women farmers who are members of that. So this is just to give a picture that we have both direct programs and also advocacy things. So this Kisan Mitra helpline is one example. The work with REDS at the grassroots level in Anandapur District is one example of direct work that we are doing. We are also working with farmer suicide families, trying to help them. Once again, there we have been able to put pressure on the government to give compensation as they should be doing, but they have they've been lax at it. So only about 25% of the farmer suicide families were getting support from the government. Through our campaign, we've been able to get another 750 farm suicide families to get 7 lakh rupees from the AP government. So that once again, that's about $7 million. This coming on 16th, on Thursday, we are doing a big public hearing of 250 farmer suicide families in Telangana, which have not received any kind of support. And we've got some senior people from the civil society as a panel of judges at the public hearing. So we are hoping that through the media attention and the reports that come out of that, it will put pressure on the Telangana government also to give support like the Andhra Pradesh government has done. Last slide, Shripriya. So just wanted to say that basically for all this kind of work, continued support is required. Just to give a financial picture, in the Kisan Mitra project, we've received about $38,000 of support from the 8 Seattle chapter. But now we are going to expand that from 5 districts to at least 10, if possible more, in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. So that requirement also would be going up to about $45,000 or $50,000 for the Kisan Mitra project. The REDS project in Anandapur, about $27,000, I think, was the support this year. But that also is expanding with especially the women farmer producer organizations in order to set up processing units and so on. They would need some support, so that would be about $40,000 or so. So there are many initiatives that AID is involved in with agriculture and farmers. I mean, these are some glimpses of work that I'm directly involved in. There's much more that we can talk about, but I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kiran. That was wonderful. I mean, the amount of work that you have done over the last 1 or 2 years is phenomenal. And I think because of COVID, all this kind of work that's been happening, we have not been able to project it because COVID has been like the main thing that has been in our focus. So I'm really glad that you shared this. So we raised about $6 million, Dilip, for COVID relief. And we have supported about $3.5 to $4 million so far on COVID work. And we'll hear from Anil next, to whom we had sent about $450,000. Our fundraising on non-COVID work has lagged a bit. So the kind of work that Kiran presented, like in agriculture, this kind of work is what AID Seattle is looking for raising funds now to support. So any help in the area of supporting the kind of things Kiran talked about would be needed, because our regular fundraising has taken a hit this year because most people have donated for COVID relief. We do have about $2 million of COVID funds still left, which we'll be using next year for both long-term livelihood, nutrition projects, as well as in anticipation of the next wave that might come. So we do have some buffer amount. So if there are a couple of quick questions, I'll give Kiran a chance to respond to them. Dilip, Srivas, anybody, Saif, any questions?
I did have one question, Kiran. One of the things that struck me was, first of all, it's great to see the work you're doing. Obviously, I think it's, especially given the conditions that you guys have had to work in the last year and a half with COVID, it's fantastic. So one thing that intrigued me was I saw that number 7 lakh relief to the families of suicide, cases or whatever, right. Which is a good number. Now, I'm just thinking in terms of, if I remember correctly, the average suicide was happening because the farmers were in debt of 50,000 or something like that, right? Something on those lines. So it almost feels like, we're willing, we as in the government and everybody put together is willing to pay 14 times as much as compensation or relief after the fact. Whereas if you just, and I'm being very simplistic with this math, but it feels like you could have potentially saved, 14 families from actually going through that heartache and that tragedy of suicide if maybe somehow we could have found 50,000 to prevent each of those deaths. And maybe I'm being too simplistic, so feel free to correct me here, but what's your thinking there? And the other thing, which I know you've addressed it a little bit in what you went through, is, one of the things that I think some of us are pretty convinced about, which we've loved about what you guys are doing, is the advocacy work in terms of how you can get a multiplier effect from every dollar or every rupee that aid invests in whatever the effort is, by getting the government to kind of step up and do a 10x or 100x or whatever it might be. So if you can, address both of those. The second one is more in terms of how to get more and more scale out of whatever you're doing, because I think you guys are doing amazing work, but obviously India is a massive country. So given that, how do you scale to the point where you're able to impact more families?
Right. No, very good question, Srivats. For the first one, I would say that the average debt of the farmer suicide family is on an average, it would be closer to about 2 lakh rupees. Some families have a little more than that. Some families have a little less than that. I think the figure that you remember is about 70,000 from a presentation, but that was about 5 years ago, right? And that was the kind of on the lower end. I was trying to point out that even with 70,000 rupees debt, somebody could commit suicide. But now, on an average, when we are continuously doing surveys and studies of the farmer suicide families, it's about 2 lakh rupees, something a little less than that. But that your question still remains that actually the government should be doing something to prevent the farmer from committing suicide rather than giving an amount afterwards. Unfortunately, the government is not basically getting its act together. But there are two things here. One is that this kind of a 2 lakh rupees debt, that the farmer is unable to repay. This exists for maybe lakhs of farmers, out of which maybe 1 in 500 would commit suicide. So actually, numerically, if you see, the problem that the government needs to address is to make sure that indebtedness problem, or whatever is leading to that indebtedness, is addressed for all the 500 of them, rather than paying this 700,000 to the 1 out of 500 who commit suicide, right? So if you look at it that way, then the scale of the problem and the calculation, I think, becomes a little bit different. But that is where I think our initiative, like the Kisan Mitra Helpline, it's essentially an initiative to prevent farmer suicides, if you look at it that way, because every distress call that comes to our helpline is a person who could potentially take the extreme step, if they're not, there's no help coming through. So to prevent the suicides, one of the major things which is required is a sense that the system is responsive. Whether it solves your problem in 6 months or 1 year, people are ready to, everybody lives with hope. right? It's only when you find that the system is completely unresponsive, there is no hope, that they are pushed to suicide. So we are trying to get the government to say that, at least be responsive. You may not solve the problem or remove the debt for all the 500 of them, but if you are responsive, then at least you can 100 out of 500 the problem may be solved, and the other 500 have the hope that the system will respond. It is creation of hopelessness that is actually pushing farmers to suicide. So I hope that kind of answers partly your question. And the other thing that you're talking about is how to scale up these initiatives. So that's definitely a big challenge. I think that for the prevention of farmer suicides, definitely, I think this kind of a helpline we found it does really work. But to move it out to, in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, it took us 4 years to establish and run it properly in 3 or 4 districts. Now we are in an expansion phase. We are trying to expand it to multiple districts. Now we have a team which can actually support that. But then to start it in a new state is once again, you need to start from scratch, because all the systems are working at the state level. Need to build a rapport with the state government system and with the district administration so that they see you as a value add. Otherwise, you are just another headache for the district collector. The district collector is overwhelmed with work. And they need to see that you are adding value to their work and have a constructive relationship with you. So to build that, also would take time. But I think definitely the Kisan Mitra model is scalable if we have that kind of a team put in place in some of the other states also. At the district level, within Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, we are already doing that. We want to expand to reach out to at least half the districts over the next couple of years.
Let's we'll Kiran, you'll be staying
Ravi,
on.
I just wanted to add one thing.
Yes,
Connecting up with again the COVID thing. Actually, the fact that in many places, Anandapur is one example. We also are supporting grassroots partners in 5 or 6 different districts in Telangana and AP, and all of them have actually jumped in a major way to help with the COVID work also. So because these organizations are very intertwined with the communities at the in the rural areas, in the interior areas, that's the reason we've been actually able to reach out to all the remote areas where the health system may not be actually functioning properly. In the cities, the cases are more, deaths are more, but also the access to the system is also more. Whereas in rural areas, the cases are not visible and the access to system is much more remote. Because of the Red's Anandapur area has been exemplary in terms of their COVID relief work also.
Great. Thanks for adding that, Kiran. So we'll move on to the next speaker, and we might come back to you for questions if there's time at the